Hello, my dear folks, my dear fellow Angelinos. Welcome back to the show. I'll redo it. Hello, my friends, my dear audience. Welcome to the show. Check out on East West with G&E TV. Today, with a reminder of the rains of the last 1 week or 2 weeks, go in and out like that, called El Nino, a part of El Nino. We are starting to think about our water. Is our water improved or is not improved? We really have to ask our authority for the questions. Today in the show, talking about a drought in the rainy season, as the title said, we have our water authorities here to share the information with us. We have Mr. Tony Zampiello. He is the Executive Director of Water Master of California. Welcome to the show.
Thank you. Good to be here.
And Ken Manning, he is the Executive Director of Water Quality Control. Right, so you're welcome to the show, sir.
Thank you.
All right.
Nice to be here.
Thank you very much for coming again. To my audience, you're no strangers because we have been doing over no less than 5 or 6 or 7 shows already
quite a few,
on a water issue for the whole year last year, right? Okay, now, this being the first of this year, especially with the rain that we just had, or rains we just had. So I have my questions prepared. I believe you have those too, right? Shall we go? I call those baby questions.
Okay.
To you, right? Okay, now, first, is El Nino over or just starting? All right, how big a water this El Nino is carrying? Are we getting as much as we expecting to have so far, please?
Well, generally our rainy season in California, and let's talk about Southern California because it's a little different in Northern California, but Southern California, our rainy season generally will run between end of October, November, all the way through the end of April. So is the rainy season over? No. We still have a few weeks left of what we would classify as the rainy season. But generally in April, we get very little rain compared to what we would normally get in January, February, or March. So we are tailing off on the end of the rainy season here in Southern California.
Yeah, I see. In other words, suppose we have a lot of water carried by El Nino or per El Nino, we had already the majority of it.
Yes,
big or
season-wise.
Right?
And really what happened this year as the El Nino came, it just really concentrated on Northern California, and that's where a lot of the rains and a lot of the water was able to be stored in Northern California. So it's kind of a two-sided story this year. It works out for the weather people because they can say El Nino showed up, but for us it didn't show up in Southern California with the impact that we thought it would.
Oh, I see. With the amount of water that we consider, we might say the El Nino hasn't come this year.
Yeah,
Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, Southern California really did not get the benefit of the El Nino currents. What happened is high pressure set up over Southern California, pushing most of that weather up and over us and into Northern California. So El Nino had an impact on California's water in a positive way, but it was mostly in Northern California, and that has benefit to Southern California because we now have more water in storage in Northern California than we had previously. So a lot of the reservoirs up there that were empty are now full or close to full.
All right, that's good to notice, all right? But you were talking about, if we were talking about Southern California though, the Southern California situation is a different thing. We'll later turn into that area, see how much, right? So to get to the definition though, El Nino is almost over, am I right?
Well, for the season, yes. You know, the phenomenon still is.
And we are not getting, or we have not gotten what we expect to have.
What we had hoped to have, no.
Yeah, there were predictions that we were going to get 150% of normal in Southern California, and as it turns out, we're closer to 50% of normal. So it's not in Southern California. It was El Nada.
I see.
Not El Nino.
El Nada.
El Nada.
El Nada is another reason?
No, El Nada is our
sarcastic
way of saying it didn't show up.
How do you say
It's
spell
at Spanish, El Nada, N-A-D-A.
E-L
Yeah,
N-A-D-A.
Yeah.
El nada.
Yeah.
Meaning El nothing.
El Nothing.
Oh, El nothing. Okay, good. Sounds good. Interesting. All right, very good. And to us, we want to know. Remember last time when you were at the show, we're talking about the possibility of El Nino. Suppose it does have a lot of water. It might land on land. It might land water on water.
Right.
So, did it land water on land, or did it land water this time on water? Proportionally.
It did land on the land. In fact, this last week of storms in Northern California, they even got a little more snow to add to their snowpack. So it did, but we need it here because there are restraints in moving it, physically moving that water south to replenish the basin here. So we needed for us to say it was successful for the overall state. We needed at least another 50% of that rain down here so we could put it in the ground.
In other words, we're talking about totally different story or different picture in between northern and southern California.
Yeah, it's dramatic. I mean, the difference is you can almost split that state in half. Northern California, from about San Jose north, got a lot of water.
The cutting line or being San Jose?
About San Jose. San Jose north got far more water than their normal, and San Jose south got far less.
I see.
And if you think of the El Nino as a band and you looked at it from here to the, let's say, Sacramento to the Oregon border, the band was the right width, but it went further into the northwest than it did coming down. So what we were hoping for was a condition where it would shift south and get us both.
I see. In other words, to Southern Californians, it looks like we're talking about a drought in the rainy season.
Yeah, we are officially, no doubt, we're in the fifth year now of a drought in Southern California.
In other words, okay, in that case, what is the overall situation about the water, counting what we already have or counting what we were supposed to have, and that means to exclude the remaining portion that you were saying that El Nino is tailing out, right? On its way out, it might have some more water for us. So excluding that part though, with what we have in Southern California already, so how do you comment on that? How much better off we are?
We since the last time we talked to you, we fared much better than we could have hoped as far as the customers and the if you look from the governor's declaration on down, everybody did their part in Southern California for saving that water. So that helped us from drawing out of that bank that we've talked about before, which is a groundwater basin. But we need that now again this summer. So the difficult part will be that you have some areas of the state that are close to or out of drought conditions, but then you have Southern California that's going to continue to have to deal with that.
Thank you very much, both.
Yeah.
I mean, I know it is necessary to talk about water. What I didn't know was that it is so necessary. People are now in a kind of like a celebrating mood for finally, oh my God, we have our rain, right? Like that. As a matter of fact, we don't.
No.
We don't have that much water.
No,
Am I right?
Yeah, the fact is that in Southern California, we are going to have to keep our current status in terms of in drought, and we're going to have to continue to conserve water throughout Southern California. So this is not going to help us. Now, what we don't know, and the variable of this whole formula, is we don't know how effective we're going to be in getting some of that Northern California water down to Southern California. So far, the state has released a lot more water this year than they have in past years. But still, the question is it enough for us to be able to handle all of the needs in Southern California? I don't think so. I don't know if Tony does or not, but I don't think so.
No, one of the things that may happen is some of the bigger agencies may relax some of their restrictions as far as delivering more water, but still, for our area, it's the rain long term that helps us store the water. So even if we can buy twice what we bought last year, it's not enough to fill that bank back up.
I see. So to give the overall judgment, are we as the same position we had been last year, or we moved up a little bit, or we went down a little bit?
Predictions wise, if we can keep our shoulder to the wheel as far as conservation, we're in a little better shape than we were last year. We were able to store a little bit of water, but we had such a reduction in demand that no one would have predicted it. We had
I see.
we had a huge reduction in
see.
the amount of water
I see.
that folks used and needed.
I see.
And these late spring rains will help to keep sprinklers off, keep things a little greener longer. If you remember last year, we didn't have any of this.
I see,
We
I
didn't.
see.
We didn't have some of the smaller, events.
And one of the other things that has happened was not really predictable, and that is the rains that we got in Southern California, in the watersheds up in the mountains. A lot of that water, because it's been so dry for so long now, that water, instead of coming down the watershed and getting to our aquifer here in the San Gabriel Valley or in other aquifers in Southern California, the mountains were sucking it up like a sponge.
Precipitated.
Yeah, so it was those mountains, that vegetation up in the mountains was sucking it up, and we didn't get as much water out of the watershed as we normally would.
All right, very good. My dear audience, it is quite necessary we hold on this show today, and it's in the information serves as our situation quite at the right moment. Because instead of celebrating of the water, quote unquote, we are still in the crisis, all right? Joining me today are our two water masters, Mr. Tony Zampiello. He is the Executive Director of California Water Master of Southern California, and also Mr. Ken Manning. He is the Water Quality Control of Southern California. Both understand water, well, exactly as the way water is, right? So let's take a very short moment out. When we come back, we'll find out by checking our inventories, like those going shelf by shelves, checking our inventories about what we have, what we do not have.
Right.
All right, so we'll be right back. Hello, my dear friends. Welcome back to the show. I would say welcome you back, you Southern Californians, to the show, because we are talking about California. We're talking about Southern California. We're talking about the water to Southern Californians. So joining us, sharing lights on this issue, a water issue, are our wonderful water officials of our Southern California state. We have Mr. Ken Manning, Executive Director of Water Quality Control, and we have Mr. Tony Anthony. Do you prefer to go Tony or Anthony?
Tony's fine.
Tony Zampiello. He is an Executive Officer of Water Master. What a word, Water Master, right? We're trying to master our water. So let's see. I mentioned at the end of the last segment, we're going to do some inventory check, right? So what's our inventory check? And let's go with our checklist, right? So let's still do with our snow cap. What's our snow caps doing?
Well, the snow cap is the snow melt, and the snow in the Sierras is the largest reservoir we have in the state of California. And the good news is that in those areas, Northern California, our snow cap is above normal by about 35%.
30 or 35% above.
Yes, and so that allows water to melt over a period of time, which allows that water to be put to greater use. And so we love the snow cap. The snow cap is of great value. Now in Southern California, there really is no snow cap.
There's no snow
You look
cap,
in the mountains,
right?
there's nothing up there. So we don't have anything to draw from in the future here.
To judge the amount of snow cap, you're talking about 30 to 35% more than last year.
No, than
normal.
average.
Then
If you think
average.
about last year, we were 1 or 2% of normal. This is 30% above the average or
Yeah.
above
This,
normal.
this is a big
1 or
difference.
2% below was last year.
Last year was,
Oh.
there's a famous picture of where the governor went last year.
Oh, you
where
showed
they
me
checked.
that picture?
Yeah.
And it's a brown tops instead of
Yeah.
white cap, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, very good. So now compared to the average, we're even better,
We're
better.
a little
right?
above average.
Okay,
Yes.
now, question is that will the snow cap in northern part of California benefit southern part of California?
But that's not a simple one-piece answer, because if you think of the system, the easiest way for the average person to think of the system is almost like an hourglass. So there's this pinch point to where, because of biological issues in the Delta region of California and the way that the flows have to work, a lot of water gets spilled out into San Francisco Bay. There's the capacity to pump in the system, but there are restrictions because of biological constraints for endangered species.
It was
and things like
exactly
that.
this morning. There was news that I heard on my way in that they are doing a check, an investigation about the money of $60 million being used, the federal money, could possibly being used wrongly because that money was earmarked for inhabitants, right? So you're talking about the Delta, that's something, whatever. So anyway, because that kind of restrictions here and there, plus the water that he says that flows into the ocean with the Bay Area, though.
Yeah, when water's coming to Southern California from Northern California, we are always subject to both an environmental and a political reality. And so we have to we have to wait until others make decisions about how much of that water is going to come through the Delta, that choke point that Tony talked about, and come down and be pumped to Southern California. And so far, we're getting far more this year than we got last year, but it's still not enough to get anywhere close to being Southern California back to where it used to be. We're going to get a lot more, but we're not going to. It's not going to help us that much.
In other words, something looking very good, but if you talk about the end of the day when the snow melts, right, the water might not necessarily 100% going to us.
Yes.
Am I right?
Yes.
Yeah, we have really two needs here. We have the current needs of meeting the pumping needs for the basin so that customers get the water. But there's also a need to pay back the bank. Just think about your savings account. We talked about this many times. There's not it's not enough just to pay the bills.
Yeah.
You've got to put money back into savings
Now that
because
you
we've been
mentioned
borrowing
the bank,
it.
let's talk about the bank. So what's the level of water level in our reservoirs? Is that, I believe, much higher than last year?
As far as the groundwater level, no. It's actually
No, let's talk about reservoirs.
Surface reservoirs.
Surface
reservoirs above the delta. Some of them are actually spilling for flood control purposes because of the type of facility they are. They have to keep a certain amount of water space available in case that snow melts too fast. But for below here, the reservoirs here, there are two different types of surface reservoirs here. There are the flood control and water conservation reservoirs that we have in the San Gabriel Valley, and those are still at minimum pool. I don't think they've increased much from the last time we talked. But then there's the big reservoir, Diamond Valley Lake, that belongs to Metropolitan. Part of the politics of the water is that they've pulled a lot of storage out of their emergency storage. So they will probably, most likely, they've indicated they'll fill their reservoir first before we get a chance to store any of additional water underground. And then what happens there is it becomes a timing game. If they could fill up fairly quick, they might make some more water available, and that's where the governor's,
But it depends on politics.
the governor's declaration, what their board decides to do as far as lifting restrictions and all of that plays in. And then if it takes too long, then you get into these pumping restrictions up in the Delta where you can't.
In other words, on the
physically
second
pump.
check of our surface reservoir, the reading is not exactly too exciting. Am I right?
Right.
Yeah.
Okay, now you mentioned about underground.
Yes.
What's the underground level?
The underground level has increased very, very slightly over last year, and that was because at the very end of the year we were able to bring a little bit of imported water in. So we've increased a little bit, and if we can keep
About what percent?
less than probably about 12%, if that.
Barely.
Yes.
Barely 12%.
And you know, our biggest time to get through now will be next month going into October, from now until October, to look at if we can keep pumping down by the conservation, then we might not be in too bad of a shape going into next winter, and hopefully we'll get.
But in general, Jack, in Southern California, our groundwater basins are not going to fill enough up. We're actually going to draw them down even lower possibly than they were last year. So we're going to take that bank account that we had, savings account that we had, and we're actually going to draw it down a little bit further this year because we're not able to get as much water from Northern California as we might like.
So exactly to the contrary. I thought when we have this much water, so for the last few months though, starting January, we constantly see rains, right? And I thought the groundwater level might be reason higher.
No.
And on the contrary, it's not.
No, we
And
need
we're
to have above
preparing
level.
to go. We're preparing to go even lower.
Yeah, we're going to have to, and you know, and for us to recover our groundwater basins, we really need to get. In Southern California, our rain falls for 3 or 4 years at about 120, 125% of normal. And this year we're about 50 to 60% of normal.
120 to 25.
And we need about 3 or 4 of those years.
Yeah, multiple years.
percent above times 3 years.
Yeah.
Because we've drawn so much out of that bank.
Yeah, that's bad. And that's why Tony used the term a bank account.
Yeah.
Especially the saving account. It's saving. It's not checking account. It's
No,
saving
this is
account.
banking. This is a savings account. That's
Yeah.
right.
Our saving account, and it is now, instead of getting surplus water, we are touching our saving account and as we go towards the summer. Right. So now, if I may wrap up the whole thing, the snow cap, even though we are looking at about kind of 30 to 35% higher than average, it doesn't help that much.
Well, locally, yes, that's
Locally,
true.
yes,
I mean,
right?
this is the sad thing is that we have been in bad shape for so many years that we're not really seeing that this is a great thing for the state. This is a great thing for Northern California, and our concern really is the message that
Yeah, of
people
course,
see.
of course,
You
yeah.
know, and what
And then the ground reservoir, or surface level reservoir, though, you do see a water level raise somewhere to some flood extent, control extent. Yet, due to politics, is those who areas that has water does not necessarily benefit Southern California.
Not necessarily.
Not
It can,
necessarily.
but it doesn't necessarily.
It can happen that way.
Yeah.
And thirdly, underground water, which is our saving
Savings
account.
account.
I like your term. I like that term, which is our saving account. We're touching it. It is a little bit higher, but we're still touching it. And towards the summer, we're supposed to use it. By what extent?
Well, I'll let Tony, because that's what Tony does is in
Yeah.
terms of demand. He's the
Well,
one who works that.
what we're thinking is all things being equal, and some of the other programs we have in place, that we'll probably draw another 80,000 acre feet out of the ground.
And by
or
percentage?
about another 12-13% of the total storage of the basin. Another 10 feet.
To
we-
pump out.
Yes, but we need that. We have to have that winter next year. I don't care what you want to call it. It's got to be wet next year here.
I'm not sure what the levels are, and Tony can correct me, but we're about 180 feet right now above mean sea level in our basin. And what Tony's saying is that we're actually going to draw that down by the end of this summer dry season. We're going to be probably down to 170, 172 feet above, which means we brought that level down. So our savings account, although it went up during the winter, it's going to go down even further than it was, down to the 170 to 172 range.
You're right.
We've never been that low in the San Gabriel Valley before, ever. So this is new
Never been
territory.
that low.
Never been that low before.
That'd be a new record.
All right, very good. And my dear audience, today we're talking about the water situation in California, namely Southern California, because we're Southern Californians. We're not that selfish, but we still have to care about ourselves. It's our own backyard we're talking about, and as our own life versus our own water we're talking about. Joining me are two wonderful water officials, and they are Mr. Tony Zampiello, Executive Director of Water Master of Southern California, and Mr. Ken Manning. I have a friend named Ken Hemming.
Oh.
Almost like a tongue twister.
Yes.
Ken Manning, he is the Executive Officer of Director of Water Quality Control. So quality, quantity, whatever we're talking about. So we'll take a short break. When we come back, we'll continue talking about what are we facing. All right, good. Hello, dear friends. Welcome back to the show. Jack Chow on East-West Show with the G&E TV. Today, our subject is our water, especially we're talking about drought in quote-unquote rainy season. Now I started to quote-unquote rainy because I do see what exactly the word rain refers to after these two segments, with the lights shed by Mr. Ken Manning, Executive Director of Water Quality Controls in Southern California, and also Mr. Tony Zampiello, the Executive Director of Water Quality. We understand we did have few drops, we did have some water, and the water either goes to the wrong part, no, I can't say wrong part, not exactly our part, or it goes, subject to politics. And yet, because of the fact that we were so down, so low, the negativity was so big that needs time, needs quantity to fill up, right? To give it the overall comment though, I'm optimistic. I will still want to hold high to kind of like hope for the best. So to what extent the crisis is over or not over or mitigated, if the answer is yes? To what extent?
Well, I think if I were to class this last year, I would say that we bought ourselves one more year by everybody doing the right thing. I wouldn't say the crisis is averted, but I think that if you go back and look at your tapes of what I had said maybe a year ago or what Ken had said a year ago, I don't think we anticipated that we'd be in as good a shape as we are now, because we couldn't factor in what people would really do to save, either taking out turf or just not abusing the water that they had, and they did a great job. So
people really embraced the whole idea of conservation in Southern California, and despite there are a few that ignored it, the vast majority of Southern Californians and Californians in general embraced conservation and have been doing a yeoman's job in helping cut down the amount of water they use in their homes. And it's had a major effect on our ability to be able to extend this drought and not have to do more drastic things than we're asking.
Oh my God, my God. You know what? I was, when you guys were making the statement, I was kind of having this brainstorm that I thought I kind of hearing some thunderstorms myself, because I never thought that after all this, we only bought ourselves about a 1 year time.
Yeah.
Right? Nothing has actually or solidly improved yet.
Yeah.
Am I right?
No.
Oh, that's too sad. That's too sad.
But, I think, like you say, to be optimistic, in the San Gabriel Valley especially, I would say on a level of world class, we have the ability to capture that stormwater when it comes. The LA County Public Works has giant basins where they can catch the water and put it in the ground fairly fast and efficiently. So, in the time that I've been doing this, I've seen years where we've bounced back 65, 70, 80 feet in a year, it's not out of the realm. But we need that water we need long, steady rain. You know, if you look at last week, we had steady rain, but it wasn't really
some kind of miracles.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And the miracles has to happen within a reasonable period of time.
Right.
In other words, you need a fire, you don't want to burn the house.
Right.
Yeah.
Right? You need a water, you don't want to run over flood.
That's right.
Something like that, right?
I think we said it a couple of episodes ago that if Tony and I were designing these rainstorms, we'd get about a half an inch to an inch every 2 weeks, and that would be perfect. But this year we didn't even come close to that.
Half to one
To
per
1 inch.
week.
Yeah, and that's because as Tony talks about, you know, the
For how
Public
long?
Works Department. Well, that's in terms of the quantity, about
Over
a half
the
an
whole
inch to an inch
summer.
over the entire
the whole
winter.
summer.
I mean, I'm
the
sorry, the
entire
winter.
winter.
Yeah,
But
winter.
but
Whole winter.
But our partnerships that we have with the County Public Works and with all of the partners, water agencies here in the valley, we do a great job of conserving all that water. If we got that kind of rainfall, and half an inch to an inch every week to 2 weeks, we would capture 100% of that water and it would all go underground. It would all go underground.
I see.
So
Good. It
they're
allows you
that
the
good.
time.
Yeah, we have that
right?
kind of a system in
It
place.
allows you the time to let it go ground instead of going to the ocean.
Yeah, the only thing we're missing is the rain.
Let me try this, because I'm no water guy. Let's try to understand it with in the financial model. Suppose I'm in debt for 200,000, right? And then I got some kind of income all of a sudden for 100. Right? Only because I was too bad in debt, this 100,000 doesn't help.
Yeah, it helps, but it doesn't get you out of debt.
But my living expenses is 100,000 already.
Yeah.
So
Yes.
that is, right?
Yeah.
So yet the 100,000, which is exactly the living expenses for myself, bought myself 1 year.
Yeah.
In the waiting of a miracle to happen.
Right.
Unless someday somehow I get 200,000 of a miracle income, well, I can never overcome the problems that I have.
Yeah, well, and
Am
if
I
you
right?
think of if you think of it in that terms, and you were to earn the 200,000, think of the ocean as the tax man. So if it all comes too fast, there's some rate that's taken off the top.
There's always oil
goes out to the ocean. Yeah.
who wants a big chunk of from you,
That's
which
right.
is the ocean,
Yeah.
that takes a big chunk of the water.
If it comes
right.
too fast and too
It
big
comes
a
too
chunk.
fast, right?
Yeah.
Like I just now said that you wanna need a fire for food for cooking. You don't want to burn the house.
That's right.
Oh my God! So it is kind of very complicated.
It's very complicated, and then when you include those variables of like Northern California and the snowpack, and then you also got to include the snowpack in the Colorado mountain shed, the watershed for the Colorado River, because they had a very good year. And
That's another resource.
so that's another resource for importing water is off the Colorado River. So you have to look at Northern California. You have to look at the mountains of Colorado and Utah, and then you have to look at conservation and all those other things that we're doing to try and manage this and balance this consumption.
That's why we still got a little reason to be optimistic.
Yeah.
Yes.
Right, because we have resources, northern Colorado or to the east of Colorado, that we might import water from.
Right.
Right. So now, can we say as a conclusion for SAFE though, we improved ourselves a little bit to an extent that we bought ourselves by doing what we do, by doing what we have been doing a year of time to overcome in the long term towards some miracles somewhere, somehow down the future.
We bought one more summer,
Yeah.
and we need
All right, we bought one more
and
summer.
we need
Yeah.
everybody to keep doing what they did last summer.
Yeah, the bottom line is we got to make sure the consumers don't stop their conservation efforts, because that is such a key element for us to be able to survive.
I'm so glad that in doing my homework, I did prepare myself of that part. All right, my dear audience, today join me shedding lights on this important issue over I would say, the most deadly crisis which is water, are my two wonderful friends. They are Mr. Ken Manning, the Executive Director of Water Quality Control, and Mr. Tony Zampiello, Executive Officer of Water Master. So we really mentioned about all this picture from a larger overall to pinpoints, and we did our inventory check, and we thought of giving overall comment or conclusion, and there was a very, well, I call it a sad conclusion that we, after all this, we bought ourselves only one summer, right? Now, let's take a very short moment out. When we come back, let's do another check. The check is at what we want to continue to do.
Okay.
Right?
Yes.
Okay, sure. All right, we'll be right back. So now with all the pictures laid down and with all the checks, even including our inventory. So my question is that last year we had a mandate made by Governor Jim Brown to do 25% of water cut. So are you saying that we shall have to continue hold on to that?
Well, I think that the governor, we're going to have a mandate to conserve again this summer. But the governor, and this will be interesting to watch, because the governor has two situations as we described. Northern California is largely out of drought.
Oh, I see.
But Southern California is not. And so I got a feeling that there's going to be changes in terms of how they enforce and how they direct the mandates that the governor's going to have. So we may see some differences between Northern California and Southern California.
I see. You read the same situation same way?
I was up in Sacramento a couple of weeks ago. I think Ken's been up there too. And the strange thing is going to be how, as he says, how they would implement it, because there are some of the cities are very concerned here in Southern California that because the way it's enforced, they could be penalized, but not necessarily be in a position where they would collect any penalties from their retail customers. So, and then the other thing is that if the restrictions totally stay in place, then it puts some of the bigger wholesale companies in a position like Metropolitan, where they don't know. They'd like to move as much down here and promote as much purchase of that water that they can get. But if the restriction stays in place, then it makes it harder to move it. So this is where we talked about the political and the real world kind of coming
coming
in other
together.
word, in their hands, they're handling a situation of either to balance northern part and the southern part of California, or to typically run different policies. So if I'm not being naive, right?
No,
if I'm not being naive, say let's do a line, let's cut off from say San Jose. You mentioned that, right? Above San Jose, anywhere you do so on and so forth, and down from that point, you'll still have to hold on to the 25% or even higher.
Right.
Or could that be a possibility?
Yeah, I think that's a possibility that there'll be different requirements in different parts of the state, depending upon your consumption. And there's also going to be, I think, continued pressure on agriculture to try and preserve and conserve as much water as possible, so that they're not drawing down the aquifers in the areas where they do their farming. So there's going to be a lot. We're kind of waiting, just like you are, to see what the state does and how they implement this policy, because before California was the complete California was in drought. Now only half of the state, but 2/3 of the population is in drought.
Back into history, though, in California, was there a period of time that you run different policies towards water issue?
All of this is unprecedented. This last drought, all of this
Never before.
Having to be done at the state level to this extent. This
So
is
we
the
have to
first
be
time.
creative.
Yes, and it's one of those things that if you look at it from a practical standpoint, the north-south approach makes sense. But making it a policy that fits with a lot of the, the Democratic leadership, a lot of them are from down in this area. So the governor needs their support to do other things as well.
So is there a way you can predict that where the governor shall tilt, Southern or Northern California?
Well, I think that what you're going to find is that they're going to work with the State Water Resources Control Board to customize the conservation requests to make them less onerous, so there's not as many penalties. But they're going to be just as restrictive in terms of what they're asking for in Southern California. So the 25%, I think, in Southern California may be eased to 20%, but it's still going to be a sizable effort to keep going. And so I think we're going to see that. But in Northern California, I think there's going to be a tremendous easing of pressure on those people up there to conserve.
And of course, there's the other side of the coin, that to rely on politicians to make a law is one thing, only one side of the coin. And the other side of the coin, you, us, you, me, she, her, right? The people here of California, what they do is their own, right? If they decided after understanding, what the understanding of you have made so far clear, that they know that they are conserving water for nobody else but themselves, they will still do it.
Yeah.
If they keep doing the same thing like they did last summer, well, we're still helped.
Yes.
Am I right?
Absolutely.
Absolutely. And so that, I guess the one message I want to make sure that people walk away from is do not change and increase the amount of water because you think the drought's over. The drought is not over, and it's going to continue for another year, at least another year, and probably more than that. So try and make whatever you're doing become the normal instead of abnormal. Make it to where it's an everyday affair in terms of the length of showers, the way you use your water outside, all of those kinds of restrictions. Make those a part of your daily life.
In other words, the human evolution, especially Californian evolution, came to a point that you have to reshape yourself.
Yes.
Yes.
You have to change your lifestyles.
Yeah.
Instead of taking 20 showers, you take 2. How about that? Instead of 2, how about do 1?
Yeah.
Like that kind, right?
Yes.
So you have really to reshape yourself. Instead of having a long, I heard lots of advertising talking about the, what you call, the plastic turf.
Yeah, the artificial turf.
Yeah?
Yeah.
The artificial well, this is going to be prevailing, or probably it calls for a lifestyle change. Instead of dreaming for green grass, you just dreaming for this artificial turf.
Artificial turf works for some people in some situations. It doesn't work for all. But
I think you have yours, right?
Well, I'm not using artificial turf. I'm using real turf. But I cut down the amount of turf on my property by about 75%, and it really reduced the amount of water that we use at our home during the summer. So everybody's going to have to look at their own situation. Some people have bigger yards, some people smaller yards. But the per capita use of water in Southern California needs to continually ratchet down. And to where we're using less water.
After all, regardless of what you want to do, you want to control yourself on water, right? If you would continue to do the 25%, which is of course just a number, but keeping the same concept though, that will benefit ourselves at the end of the day.
Yes.
Right. Very good. And to end of the show, sir, what do you want to, as a message, to deliver from the Water Authority, Master of Water? We're talking about years down into the road. We're talking about our sons and grandsons and the posterities forever, right? So you got to be a responsible generation to make sure that you pass on to them a water system, or even a water concept.
Well, and
to let it go on.
I think the biggest challenge going out into the future is that if let's say that we do reduce the amount of water we use, the phenomenon that people are going to see is that you still need the pipes to move the water. You still need the pumps. You still need the infrastructure. So you're going to see changes in your bill. And your bill over the years may not net to the decrease that you make. But it's like, an unkept highway or freeway or something like that. If you don't put money back into it, you can't travel it. So that's the challenge, I think. going forward, because a lot of things were based on sales, and as sales reduced.
I think what Tony just said was the cost of water is going to continue to go up.
Yeah, I
I mean,
understand.
if you really
yeah.
cut to the chase, the cost of water is going to continuously go up because the fixed costs are always going to be there. But we're not going to have the quantity of water, and we're asking people to reduce.
Well, he mentioned something like the logic, right?
Yeah.
Whatever you have, whatever you want to do, you need the pipe to transfer it,
Yeah.
right? You know, well, the pipe doesn't come like a free lunch, and you have to pay for it. So what you're doing, you're not expecting a proportionate going down,
Right.
a downtrend of your bill by exact say, hey, I saved myself 25%. How come my bill went up for 2%?
Yeah.
Or 5% or 12%? How about that? So the answer is that you need money to do the piping,
Yeah.
right? So your ending message, please.
Well, you know, again, don't stop conserving. But if we're looking out years, decades into the future for our next generations, is that we have to start thinking about how we're going to use a lot less water, not just a little less water, a lot less water as the population of California grows, because we're not getting more water in the way of rainfall. We're getting less. So we need to, if you think about those two basic formulas, we're getting less water and we're getting more people. So the per capita use of water has to go down. And then we as professionals need to continuously look at new ways of being able to stretch water and get new water. So desalinization, recycled water, additional stormwater capture, all of these things that we can do, we promise we're going to continue to do. But conservation is at the core of what we're asking people to do now.
And that reminds me of one study that I found out that Mars, many, many years ago, Mars was covered with water, all surface water. So now it's a dry planet.
Yeah.
Right? It's
They
dry
didn't
planet.
have us managing.
Yeah.
No, they didn't have Tony, didn't have Kim,
That's right.
and they didn't have a show host.
That's right. There you go.
Okay, very good. So together we make things move. Together we call upon people, my dear fellow Southern Californians, please do something to protect yourself, protect your own environment. Today joining me with the water issue are who I'm thankful to is Mr. Ken Hamming and Mr. Tony Zampiello. They both are Californian Water Authority officials. And I want you to promise me somewhere down the road, like in June or before the summer comes,
Yeah.
let's do it one more time.
Sure.
I would love to.
All right, sure. Let's once again, even though they say, hey, you guys crying wolves, we'll still have to cry because the wolf is there.
Yeah.
Right? Anyway, so thank you very much, my dear audience. Thank you for watching. And to you, thank you for sharing.
Our pleasure.
We'll see you.